Hi Raghuveer. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Srini, you are.
All right. So, all right, guys, let's start the session. I will to just set you all up. Let's send some links in the chat, and then let's start the session. Right. All right, guys, let's start today's session. I'm Sreenikethan here, and I'm a DevOps manager in MTC. And today's session will be mainly to get you started on what is Webtember and also to get you started with the basics of web development, basics of development in general, how to set up projects, how to set up VS Code, all these kinds of things. So at the end of all these four sessions, you will be having a portfolio website ready for your own profile, which will look something like this. This portfolio website right here was designed by our council uh, member Asta, and she has done a really great job at it. So our goal for this session will be to do something like this for yourself, and you can also apply your own creative twists and all this stuff. So in this portfolio website, you can see some specific features like there's interact like some cool animations. There's dark theme, light theme toggles. There is a section that describes your your background and some really good qualities. And also you can list out all the tech stack and all the things that you're really comfortable and prepared and knowledgeable at. And you can also feature some of your favorite projects in some sections like these. And finally we will have a like a contact section where you can if a person is viewing your portfolio website, they can contact you for more details or for job opportunities, etc. I think everyone knows the benefit of having a portfolio website. And if you notice the URL, it's like a completely hosted URL. It's not a local host port number something something blah blah. It's nothing like that. You can send this link to anyone sitting anywhere in the world and they will be able to see your portfolio website. That's kind of cool, right? So I'm assuming with this, let's get started with the session. Before that, I'd like to see a show of hands on, how many people are really familiar with web development or just developing in general. Just raise your hands who's a complete beginner to this. Let's put it that way. Are you guys able to raise hands or is it disabled? Okay, so yeah, so just anyone who is kind of a beginner to development in general, do raise your hands. We will guide you accordingly. Okay, that's a good show of hands. All right, guys. About one third of the members here are beginners, so that's great. Let's begin from scratch. So we will take you through all the terms and terminologies, tools, programs. What resources to use, and all this stuff. We'll be covering it in these sessions, so that you can get started coding and you can actually have something you can show, right? So before that, I have sent the link to this documentation. This is something that me and my teammate Asta have prepared for you to you can read this at your own pace. We will be going through this in this workshop basically. So if you have any doubts, please don't hesitate to use the chat and you can just let us know. We have other council members in the meeting who will assist you. All right. And if you feel comfortable, you can read the document at your own pace. Okay. So let's just look at Trump's face here. and we'll start with the workshop, right? And yeah, this is the first session out of the four. So here, this session is purely just basics. We won't be doing much coding. We'll just mostly work on explaining the concepts, and we'll get your laptop or your basically your computer set up with the necessary software. So there will be a lot of theory, but just we have tried to make it as short, sweet, and simple as possible. All right. So let's get started. And yeah. So we are working on what's called web development, which is the tech stack and all the tools that are involved to make web pages. And before that, I think it's useful to explore what a tech stack is. So here's an example of a tech stack that's used for web development. So it kind of seems confusing, we can say. So we'll be going through all of this soon, right? And usually there are multiple categories of tech stack. So one is called front end, one is back end, databases. The first three are the very important ones that you need to get a hold of. So let's just start going through them. I will be referring to this documentation because it's convenient, but I will also be verbally explaining most of it. So you don't have to read. You can read along if it's helpful for you. So there first of all, there are multiple aspects to tech stacks, right? Because a component is made out of these aspects. So let's start with languages. That's very obvious, like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Python, etc. These are the languages that you actually type the code in. So I think that's clear to everyone by now. There are some concepts called frameworks and libraries. We will elaborate it later, but those are basically packages and code that are made by other developers. You can use these packages and frameworks to essentially speed up your development and make your life very easy. It's like writing in like C language versus just writing in Python. It's the fact that Python has a lot of functionality inbuilt with it, right? Whereas for C you need to write a lot of code yourself. That's a very rough analogy, but you get the benefit of using frameworks, which is that it will just make your it adds a lot of functionality to your code base. Next, we have these things called databases. Again, we'll elaborate them later, but you might have learned in your previous courses, like in school or stuff. Databases, in short, basically can store any kind of data that has to be stored for a long time, right? So let's say you go to Instagram and you upload a picture of like the favorite coffee shop that you just visited. These photos have to be stored somewhere, right? Because if you reload the page, you don't want your photo to disappear. And if someone else accesses your profile, you still want them to be able to see your photos, right? So that's where databases come in. Now there are more tools that we also use when it comes to a tech stack. This thing is called version control, right? Version control is basically special software that helps you keep like snapshots of your code. It's very simple. I'll show you an example which I've been personally facing. So just have a look at this folder. You can see I have like made multiple versions of this documentation file, but then it gets kind of messy, right? You can see I have a version 1, version 2, version 3, final, and then I decided that this is the final one, but then I had to make a version 4 anyways. So this gets kind of messy. Do you get my point? In the sense that you really don't know what each version of this file is. Like if I open it in a text editor, I have to manually scroll through all the lines and I have to see what has actually changed between these files. And let's say I made a mistake like several versions ago, but then I want to revert that mistake. How will I find out which version I had made the mistake and what was the state of the code at that point? All these kind of things become really difficult if you don't have a version control system. So the one we'll be using for our development is called Git and GitHub. You must have been really familiar with it. In fact, this very documentation is stored on GitHub. And what Git and GitHub basically does, we'll get through the details much later. But yeah, the summary of it is that it just helps you to track the history of your code base, and you can revert any mistakes which you have made and look for, and also compare code files. The next tool that we are looking at is something called package managers. And remember the frameworks and libraries I mentioned earlier, like React, Angular, and all. So you must have some mechanism to actually download these libraries, right? That's basically what package managers are for. That's pretty much it. Package managers just help you maintain the different versions that you want to use for any libraries. And you must have heard of Node.js and Python's pip, right? The pip install command where you can literally install any package. That is basically a package manager. Now, the next tool, it's not really popularly spoken about, but then build tools are really cool stuff. And it's basically to make the process much faster. So let's say you're developing a web page with like some 20 pages, but then you don't want to give the user like 200 files, correct? So there are really popular tools. You might have heard of Vite. Like this is a popular build tool that basically takes all these 200 code files and then it just makes them into like 5 files or something. I will show you a live example. So let's consider the workshop, I mean, the web page, the portfolio web page that you just saw, right? So if you can look at the file tree at the left, you can see that there are so many code files, there are a bunch of images. So there's like at least 20 files in this list, right? But then sending all these 20 files to the user will be a very slow task. So what this tool has done is that you can just look at this list, which is just 6 files. There is one JavaScript file, there is one CSS file, a bunch of images, and then an HTML file. So don't you think it's really efficient when you send the user just these 6 to 7 files instead of sending all of these 20, 30 files? It just makes your performance much faster for both uh, for any kind of people to, like if they're viewing on a really slow phone or if they're even viewing on a fast computer, right? So that's what build tool does. And also it has another benefit that this is not valid JavaScript, but then this is a special version of JavaScript. We will get into it in the future sessions. This is called JSX. Okay, this JavaScript does not run on your browser, but these build tools go through the effort of converting this to code that will run on your browser. So that's the purpose of build tools, right? And also you can have any API stuff that you're using. Let's say you're using Google Maps API to display a map on your web page for, let's say, your the company where you work at or something. So these kind of things will also come here. Is everyone clear so far with what are the different aspects of a tech stack? You can just give thumbs up reacts. Okay, that's great. So if you have any doubts, again, please don't hesitate to just ask in the chat. All right. So now with these points in mind, let's move on to the different components of tech stack. So this is what you would have heard a lot, quite commonly spoken about. And so it's basically front end, the second is back end, and the third is in databases. There is more types of components, but then we'll be covering these top three as that's what gets you out there like 80% of the time. So all the above stuff that I mentioned, we'll be using stuff from all of these aspects to build these components. So now front end is a component. Let's start with that. It's also called as client side. So this is any type of software that runs on on the user side. So we are thinking in the sense that you are a developer and you'll be making an app that is used by users, correct? So client side is any app that's running on that's basically what the user sees and interacts with. So here's an example. Whenever you open the Instagram app and you go to the Reels section or DM section, that's basically a client side program, right? Because you are looking at something that looks nice to your eyes and also something that's fun to interact with. Technically, when you log into your LMS website, the actual website that you see with your eyes, right? Like the buttons and links and all, that's part of the client side. So all the data for the client side is usually given from the backend. We'll explore what the backend is, for example. Soon. And if you think about it, all the reels that you watch, they are not stored on your phone, right? Like multiple terabytes of reels. Your reels are downloaded as and when it's required, or as and when you scroll them, right? So that's where you need a server side, or it's called a backend. So assuming that you understood front end, I think back end is really easy to understand as well. And this is basically any code that runs on a dedicated server that's owned by the companies. So if you have Instagram reels that you're browsing, they are taken from an Instagram server sitting somewhere in UAE, correct? Like which is under Meta's control. And let's say you're playing some multiplayer games. These games have a common server, right, which you connect to, like Asia, like Germany, or stuff like that. These servers are nothing but the backend of the game, which give you the actual game data. Let's say someone moves in the game, you should be able to see that movement, right? That is done with the help of backend. This is also termed as something called business logic. So let's say you're building any kind of software even for a company, so all the background stuff or the backend stuff is what's considered in this section. Even when you use ChatGPT, the actual model is not located on your laptop or phone, but rather it's run on a server that's owned by OpenAI, correct? So this is basically the purpose of backend. Let's move on to the third component. It's called databases, and I think it's kind of clear at this point. Let's go through it. Any data that has to persist for a long time is stored in databases. So the example of when you upload Instagram posts and reels, right? And let's say you hit the like button on a reel, or make a comment in some reels. All these stuff has to be stored somewhere, right? Because otherwise, how will you keep track of them? So that's what databases are for. Again, the databases, you might think, what's the difference between backend and database? And that's a very valid question. These two are essentially very closely linked to each other, and it's usually on the same server that the database software also runs. So even in if you think about bits, the bits ERP is a very well, it's a very critical part of your student enrollment, right? So the ERP stores which courses you enrolled into, which year you joined, what courses you have to complete for finishing your degree. All these kind of information is stored in the database. And that basically concludes what are the three components of a tech stack. And just so you know, a full stack developer is someone who's capable or who's knowledgeable to develop both front end and back end software. So if you're a full stack developer, you have more job opportunities, since you are able to develop basically the entire application stack, right? So yeah, that marks the end of the components of a tech stack. So if anyone has doubts, please, or just give a thumbs up if you're clear with the concept. Any doubts, please address them in the chat. All right, so that seems good. And again, guys, don't hesitate to ask doubts. So now now that you're familiar with the components of a tech stack, let's also move on to the web development concepts. So I'm not covering anything very new here, but it's basically learning, applying what you learned earlier, like in the previous section, when you're just applying it for web development specifically, since this is what our workshop is focused on. You might know a lot of these terms, so let's still go through them either ways for so that we are all on the same page. So there are three popular languages for web development, and this is considered, the ground languages, all these three which you need to absolutely know in order to do web development. The first is HTML, right? HTML is used to describe the structure and the content of the website. So if you look at this table of contents list on the right side, the fact that I have included all these names and the title and all this stuff, it is part of the HTML code, right? Now the second thing is called CSS, which is used to describe the aesthetics of your website. This is straightforward, as in let's say I have a logo here which is positioned on the left side. The text is at gray color here. This has a blue background. There is some space on the top and bottom. So all these kinds of visual choices and styling, aesthetics, all these stuff, it's done with the help of CSS. Now there's a third thing called JavaScript, which is used to add functionality to the website. So let's say you have GitHub here, right? And I want to click on some of the links on the left side. So when I do click on a file name, you see how it actually browses to the file, or like let's say if I click here, I can view a drop down menu. All this stuff is done with the help of JavaScript, because it acts like the brain of the web page, as in it actually does the actions. With just HTML and CSS, you will just see a web page that doesn't do much when you actually want to interact with it. And just so we summarize this thing, oh yeah, this is the diagram from earlier, right? So I think now you will be able to get a somewhat of a sense of this diagram. We have front end, back end, and databases from the tech stack. So HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, as you might have figured out by now, it is purely front end, as in it is the stuff that's responsible to be displayed to the user. Hence, it's why it's called front end. Backend is software that runs on the servers, and the user doesn't get to see these software, right? So that's, you have example like Java, Python, .NET languages like C Sharp, Visual Basic, etc. And databases, it's also there. There are some very popular industrial, de facto standards. So we have MySQL, we have MongoDB, and PostgreSQL. So these are the top three categories or components of a tech stack. And I mean, in web development specifically, there are also other components of tech stacks, but these are more or less, built for the purpose of managing the first three tech stacks, right? So with this, let's also continue. Framework and library is a very important concept as well. So we had briefed through it earlier, and these two don't have much difference apart from the fact that a library comes with just the code, but you have to make all the conscious choices. And a framework is code that it is more like a blueprint, and it's more or a larger scale. It gives us a lot of you can say it comes with batteries included. So Django framework is a popular web server framework that comes with a lot of choices that's made for you. Well, React is a library which you have to write the code from scratch using the React library, and it doesn't assume any defaults for you. For the most part, you don't have to really break your head over the difference between these two. But just keep this in mind when you want to really get the understanding for it. So there is another concept called static page. This name is kind of self-descriptive, and what it means is that where the backend part of the tech stack doesn't really have much substance to it. So it's purely a static page is a kind of a web page where you're purely focusing on the front end experience of the user, in the sense that you really don't have a database and you also don't have much going on in the backend, right? But if you think about it, you have to absolutely have a backend and a front end. Out of all these components of the tech stack, the front end and the backend is absolutely necessary. So why is the front end is obviously necessary because that's what the user is going to see. But backend is also necessary because there has to be some software that has to send you the files, right? Let's say someone goes to google.com, and there has to be a server or a Google, like a Google owned machine that actually sends you this HTML page, right? All this code that is affiliated with google.com's homepage. There has to be some machine that's sending you that. That's the purpose of having a backend. Now there are different like depths of backend, and for if you think about, let's say if I go to Google and I type, let's say, Microsoft Tech Club here, and we get our web pages like the website, LinkedIn, Instagram, and so and so. So there has to be some code that's running on the Google server that actually fetches these results and writes them in this specific order, right? So this is the job of backend. But then if you look at our portfolio website, we don't really have much backend stuff going on. As in, this is just a web page that just displays you content. There's nothing dynamic here, and you just have like interactive animations, and that's it. So this is what we call a static page. And our workshop today, or for remaining sessions, will focus on creating a static page in this sense, of this type. So you do not this page will be the same every time you load it. That's the goal of a static page. The benefit of using static pages is that you have a really big variety of free hosting options, because it's really easy for the backend provider, correct? It's really simple for the backend provider. All they have to do is just give the client the files which they need. So GitHub Pages is a really cool example. And there is a service called Netlify, which is what we have used as set up by Asta to host this web page. So it's really for free. You can check it out later. And we'll also be covering these concepts we'll also be going through deployment and all in the coming workshops. Speaking of which, what is deployment? Well, it's nothing but just the act of publishing your code to a backend provider and make it publicly available. So I have the code with me on the laptop, but then I also have to, upload it somewhere and make it publicly accessible, right? This act is, the fancy word for it is called deployment. So for static page deployment, there's really nothing much that you need to do. You just have to register for a static page deploy like provider and just upload your files or connect your GitHub repository or whatever, and they'll take care of the the actual sending to the client part. So this is a really cool diagram that I found online. And this kind of explains the purpose of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, where HTML is the skeleton, CSS is just the appearance and aesthetics, and JavaScript deals with the actual functionality, the brains of the web page. So far, is everyone clear with the terminology? Because this is really helpful for you to later look up resources online and actually get an understanding of what is there to begin with. So give a show of thumbs, or if you have any doubts, please let us know in the chat. All right, let's proceed. So we have learned some important terms, right? We will just now we'll use all the learning that we have done so far to define the tech stack that we'll be using for web development purpose, right? So for static page deployment, which is what we are going to make, a static page portfolio, we only need to care about front end for the most part, and we also need to choose a backend for actually giving getting a website name, like as you can see here. This is called a domain name, webtembermtc.netlify.app. So this is why we need a backend to just get this domain name and for this page to be served to us. Let's go through the front end and what it means for a front end in web development. And here the front end is the software that actually deals with the user, right? And in this case, it's just your web browser. This very window is the front end for a web page, right? Because that's where you see the actual stuff. So that's really simple. Now, when it comes to backend, we have a lot of options which are very popular, but then we also have a lot of ways to host have backend code. There are multiple types of backend software. One is a HTTP server. So HTTP server is a special software that actually uses the HTTP protocol to understand the URL and get the correct file and then give it back to the user. So we will have a HTTP server. That's the first thing. Second thing is if we have any backend software for actually fetching data from the database, performing any calculations, doing compiling the results, or using other APIs and stuff, formatting the results. All this stuff can also be done on the backend. Imagine the example of BITS ERP, correct? When you log into the ERP to view your courses and all that, you don't want to see the courses of other people, correct? So what the backend has done for you is that it has fetched only the courses that's registered under your name. So this kind of filtering job is done purely in the backend. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the backend. Now, there are two popular tech stacks that are used for web development. So this is what you need to actually be aware of for industry readiness. The first tech stack is called LAMP. It's basically it's an acronym or an abbreviation which stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So Linux is the operating system where all these softwares run. Apache is the name of a very popular HTTP server in the sense that it is the software that actually responds to the HTTP URLs that you provide. MySQL is a database software, as we explained earlier. It's the software that stores the user's data and sends it to them if they want it later on. And PHP is the programming language, just like how Python, JavaScript, etc. are all programming languages. We can also have PHP. So this LAMP stack has been the founding tech stack for web development, like early 2000s, and even a big percentage of the web today runs on the LAMP stack. So, or you might have heard of WordPress. This is a really popular application that software that runs on the LAMP stack. The second tech stack, which we'll be learning today, is called the MERN tech stack. And you can just Google for web development tech stacks. There's like hundreds and hundreds of them, but then there's really a few of them that's popular, right? So MERN tech stack stands for MongoDB, which is a database software, Express.js, which is a backend framework. Express.js also has HTTP server functionality in it. So it does some other things, and one of the main things it does is giving a HTTP server. React is now a front-end JavaScript library. So remember earlier we discussed how there's HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? So this is enough to make web pages, technically speaking. But then to make your life easier, you can use this library. So React is a really popular library that has a lot of benefits to it. One of its key benefits is componentization, where you can divide your web pages into like sections. These are called as components, and you can store all these sections in various different files. And then you have a master file that will take all of these components and then just display it as a single page. So this kind of splitting your code is really helpful, because it's better to split your code into multiple files rather than to just keep all your code in a big single file, because that might just make it difficult to navigate through the file and all these kind of things. So just to summarize, React is a popular front-end library, and we'll be covering it in the coming sections, coming workshops. And finally, we have this software called Node.js. Node.js is a runtime environment. So you might have heard of this term. In Java, for example, we call it the Java runtime environment. And it sounds a bit complicated, but then it's really simple. So when you have a code in some language, right, let's say you make a Python program and you have a Python script and then you run it. So the question here is, how exactly do you run the Python code? So you open a terminal, you type Python space and followed by the file name. Now, when you hit enter, what happens is that the Python program starts, it then reads your code and then executes your code. So this Python program is what the runtime environment is basically. Basically, it's software that allows your code to run and gives it all the necessary inputs that it needs. So similarly, when you think about it, your browser is a runtime environment, right? Because when I run JavaScript in my web browser is allowing me to run the JavaScript code. That's basically the logic behind it. So this is called V8 is the runtime that's created by Google, and this is the JavaScript engine, as they call, which runs JavaScript code on your web browser. So this V8 engine is what comes with your web browser. And just like how JavaScript runs on the web browser, we also have another famous program that runs JavaScript on your laptop, independent of a browser. Instead of Python, you can just open a command prompt. You can just say, you can just run your JavaScript on your computer without a web browser. And that famous program is nothing but Node.js. So what you can ideally do is just say node space and then type the name of your JavaScript file, and it will literally run on your laptop. So that's the idea behind a runtime environment. And if you go anywhere, right, there's always a runtime environment, even if you don't know it like upfront in your face. For your laptop, like let's say you have a Mac OS laptop, I mean a MacBook, or you have a Windows laptop. In this case, your operating system kind of behaves as the runtime environment for your programs to run, right? So that's basically the idea behind Node.js. So just to keep in mind, LAMP stack and MERN stack are the popular industry popular stacks, and you can go through them later. And for the coming workshops, we'll be using just React and Node.js. We are not using database, just to keep the workshop simple, because for a static page, you don't really need a database and a dedicated backend. So we'll just be considering the RN part of this. So I hope everyone's clear with the tech stacks used in web development so far. You can give a show of hands, I mean thumbs ups, and any doubts, please mention in the chat. All right, let's proceed. So now is the fun stuff, guys. Now this is where we are, actually going to set up, your development environment. Like all the software that you need on your laptop and all that stuff. So first of all, you need to write code somewhere, correct? And you can open up Notepad and just start typing code, but that's going to be really painful, because you're just going to be staring at a black and white screen for hours and hours, and you don't get any autocomplete, this, that, etc. So a code editor is a really useful piece of software, and it's really helpful. If without a code editor, you practically can't do large scale projects. So a really popular one is called Visual Studio Code. Just keep in mind that there are two softwares, Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. These have a very similar name, but then they are kind of used for different purposes. And the one we are using for web development is called Visual Studio Code. It's made by Microsoft, and it's basically the de facto standard in the industry because it's free and it has a bunch of extensions. And yeah, that's about the code editor. Now there's a really important concept called workspace, and it's basically what allows you to let the code editor to have a complete idea of all the code files that you have in your in your project. So let's say I have the just give me a moment. Okay, apologies. So yeah, we have this is the folder that I have for the the portfolio website, correct? You can find this on GitHub. We have sent the links in the chat. But the point I'm trying to say is you just let's say you want to edit this specific file. So will you like let's say the index.html. If you open with Notepad, you all you see is the code for this file, correct? What if you also want to get the code that's stored in other files and you want to use it to autocomplete and stuff like that? So that is where workspace comes into play. So for now, I have this VS Code editor, and we will just go through the setup process for it later. But it's really simple. So this is a really empty code editor, right? Basically Notepad with nothing much in it. But then now I can drag this file, drop it into VS Code, and then now I can edit the file, which is basically the same thing that you saw with Notepad. But then I also want to access, the other files in the project, and then let's say I want the autocomplete information. That's when you do something called creating a workspace. So in VS Code, it's really simple. All you have to do is just open the file browser here. It's called the Explorer, and click on the Open Folder button. And when you just browse the folder, this the folder path, I can click Select Folder, and you can see that all the files that I have in the project are displayed on the side. So what happens is I can open index.html by just clicking on this list. And then when I, let's say, try to autocomplete the path, it also gives me suggestions, right? And this is really useful for, speeding up your coding process. So that's the gist about workspaces. But then what all you have to do is just when you open a new window, just go to the Explorer window and there'll be an open folder button. We'll be going through VS Code much like in detail later, but just to give you an idea, right? Yeah. So you also get you have a search feature in VS Code, which you can search for all the code files in your project for a certain word that you're looking for. And also the very most useful important feature is a command prompt window or a terminal window that comes within the VS Code window. So you can run all your npm commands, Node.js commands to like uh, build your code or convert blah blah blah. So this is really helpful. That's why having a good code editor helps you. So I hope you guys are sold on the idea of a code editor. There's also a really useful feature of this VS Code called extensions, and that's basically plugins that you download for VS Code. Now, the kind of plugins we are talking about is mainly for like language support. Let's say you're developing JavaScript code, so you want to download a JavaScript extension that gives you the autocomplete for JavaScript and highlights the errors in your JavaScript code. Similarly, let's say you're making Python code and you want to install a module like using the pip command. After you install the module, you want your code editor's autocomplete to recognize the module, correct? So for that, we have Python extensions. And there is another extension called Prettier. It basically formats your code to make your code look more structured and better. There is no functional uh, like point of this, but then these kind of extensions, they just make your code look easier for the human eyes to read and also for other people to collaborate. ESLint is the JavaScript extension that I mentioned earlier. So there are a bunch of useful extensions. You can also get extensions to change your color scheme. So I personally haven't configured anything here, but then you can go through themes. So that's the gist about code editors. I hope everyone's clear on the code editor. If also guys, if I'm going too fast or if I'm going too slow, please just drop a message in the chat and we'll see to it. All right, let's continue. So after the code editor, we have this concept called version control. So version control is basically the thing that I explained earlier. It's the idea behind version control is you're keeping track of the multiple versions of your code in a very structured manner. So instead of creating files like this, like having multiple version files, what I can do is I can take a snapshot of my code. It's like creating a full backup of your code at a given point of time, and then you can give a very useful name to it. So if you look at this very repository which we have for the Webtember document, the Webtember portfolio, you can just click on this button and you can see that we have made a bunch of commits, and each commit has a name to it and also the time it was made. And let's say I have there was a error in the code for the portfolio. So this is where I had fixed one of the certain errors. Now if I click on the name of the commit, this GitHub website will show you exactly what files I have made the changes in, right? Yeah. So for example, you can see that I have deleted this line of code from the hero.jsx file, and I have added this line of code, or like replaced it with this line of code in that file. If I scroll down, I can see that I have made changes in other files as well. And on the left side, you can see which are the exact files which I have made changes in, right? So don't you think this is really helpful, where you can keep track of the exact changes you have made in your code and also give it a very useful name? So later, when you go through the list of commits, you know exactly what changes you have made. And let's say there was a problem with this fix that I made, and I want to reverse the changes that I made in this commit. So I can basically go through this commit and then look at the files myself and then run some commands that will undo the changes in it. So that's basically the advantage of maintaining, version history. So these, now you might have heard of two things, Git and GitHub. They are very related to each other. And the best analogy which we can give, or like the best explanation which we can give, is that Git is the software that actually does this kind of version tracking, right? Like when you create a commit, and yeah, a commit is basically a snapshot which you take of the code. So when I say I made 10 commits, it means I have taken 10 snapshots, or 10 backups of my code. But then Git is the software that does it for you, and it does it very efficiently. As in, if you make 10 commits, you won't have 10 times the size of your code, but it has a very smart system to keep your file size also under control, so you don't have to worry about it. Now GitHub is a platform. It's like a free platform offered by Microsoft, or like now owned by Microsoft, that runs the Git software. It runs the hosts your Git repositories. So let's say you want to collaborate with few of your team members. You should have Git set up on your local laptop. You should have a Git repository set up on your local laptop, and you should also have it connected to a GitHub repository, so that you can everyone can upload code to the common GitHub repository, and you can use the Git software on your laptop to get the changes that other people have made from GitHub. So it's like how watching videos is a concept, right? Where the video is your the code in this case, and YouTube is the platform that stores your code, or like stores your videos, right? So in that sense, GitHub is the platform that stores your code for you. It's like one of the backend services, if that makes sense. So I hope everyone's clear about the difference between Git and GitHub. Just guys can show thumbs up. And if anyone's still confused about Git and GitHub, please drop a message. All right. So I will also explain some terms about Git and GitHub, and we will also later on include some links for some useful videos which you can watch about Git and GitHub. So very basic term, a commit, right? Commit is basically one snapshot, as I said earlier. So that's one thing. And then there's concepts called pushing, pulling, fetching, syncing, all these terms, right? So these also sound complicated, but then it's really simple. So you have code that's you're developing locally on your laptop, correct? So when you make some commits on your laptop, these commits don't immediately go to the GitHub server, right? These commits still stay on your laptop only, and the act of sending these commits to the actual GitHub server is called pushing. and the way we say it is called pushing your changes. So let's say I opened this code file, and then I just made some changes to it, right? Or like, let's say I type the word hello here. Now I can go to this in VS Code. We have a GitHub panel where it shows me whatever changes I've made. And then when I, let's say, click on this plus icon, I'm telling that let's include this file in my current commit, and I can give my commit a name. And then when I click the commit button, this will be added to the list of commits to be pushed. Let me just repeat again. I am working on this code file, right? And let's say I added a line of code here. You can see that it displays in a green color here. So this is the changes that you make. Now in Git, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that this is the file that I want to create a commit for. Maybe I have changed like 10 files, correct? But then for this specific commit, I want to include only this one specific file. So the term that you use here is called staging your changes, right? And when you stage your changes, that's when you are preparing this for commit. You can give the commit a specific name to it, and then when you click on the commit button, it will keep track of those changes. Now remember the commit history that I showed you on GitHub earlier? That's the same feature that's located in GitHub as well. So these are all the commits that all the people in this repository have made, and you can see that there are two versions of the repository. One is called the origin, and one is called the local repo that you have. So again, it's nothing complicated. This is where GitHub. This basically tells the pink color is where GitHub is right now, and blue color is where I am right now in my local laptop. So what this means is that this commit that I just made, I have not yet copied it, or like I have not sent it to GitHub yet. So what I'm going to do, there's this button you can see, it says push, and when I click the push button, it will take a few moments, and then you can see that the changes are pushed to GitHub. So now when I go back to the GitHub website, then I like just reload this page, you can see that my commit has appeared here. And then when I go to the commit, you can see that I have added this one line. So that's basically how committing works. And let's say someone else has made a commit to the repository. That's when you use the pull button to download their changes and show it in your code base. So as and when you use the tools, you'll get used to it, because at the start it feels really overwhelming, and that's completely all right. There's no reason to feel scared or just frustrated at this, because honestly it was the same for me when I started out learning these things. So it will take time, but then once you get used to it, it's really helpful and one of the best tools that's for developing. So let's continue with the rest of the sections. I hope Git and GitHub is clear, and how version control basically works. So just give a thumbs up, guys. If you need any clarification on the terminology, just drop a message in the chat. Okay, so we will be moving on to the installation part after this, and we'll come back to the useful tips section later on, because or we'll just go through this really quickly because it's just some obvious stuff. And yeah, basically you can read through this later. It's in the repo. And yeah, let's start with the project setup. So what we're going to do is right now, the code that you see for this portfolio, we're going to get it set up on your laptop, right? Just give me a moment. Yeah. So as we discussed earlier, there are some tools that you need to download. The first is called Visual Studio, and this is the URL for it. So you can just go here, click the download button, or there's a download page area. So just choose your operating system and click the download button, and you can install it, right? So just I'll send the link in the chat. You guys, whoever is yet to install, please just go ahead. Let's give you some time for it. So I think for the rest of the workshop, we will be only going through the actual installation setup and getting it working on your laptop. So pretty much the yap part of this workshop is over, right? All right. So I'll just I'm using Windows, right? And if you have macOS, I think for most of the part the steps should be very similar. I already have VS Code on my laptop, but then I'll also just be downloading it once again to show you how it works. So downloads these days are really simple. So all you have to do is just save it somewhere, right? And okay, so you'll be given an installer file, just open it, right? And one second. Yeah, so you'll be seeing something like this, okay? So this is the window that guides you through the setup for Visual Studio. And I'll just choose a location here. Go next, next. And you can create a desktop icon if you want. And yeah, so these options I'm just unchecking for my purpose, but you can leave it as the default if you'd like. So when you click the install button, it will start, well, installing it, and just give it a moment. So everyone just ensure you have VS Code setup. Can we have a raise of hands for whoever is yet to set up GitHub? VS Code. Okay. All right, guys. So yeah, so there are a few people if who are yet to install VS Code. So if you have any if you have any clarifications, just let us know in the chat. I have sent the link for downloading VS Code and also the link for documentation if you need it. So that's here. So the installer is pretty straightforward. As you just saw me do it, it's you just have to click next, 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 and click install, right? So let's wait a moment for that. All right, guys. I hope you have installed VS Code. So when you click finish, it will open, your brand new VS Code instance, and it's kind of ready to use. But what we are going to do first is also install the other softwares first, and then we'll get to opening the code in Visual Studio Code. All right. So step one of installing a software is getting VS Code, and the next thing you can just go through this all the links for commands and all this kind of stuff is available in the project setup you know section. Okay, the next thing we need to do is download git client, so or the git software. So remember, as we explained earlier, git is the program that actually does the version management stuff on your laptop. So we need to have that downloaded, and what VS Code will do is that VS Code will use the git software that you downloaded to keep track of the changes. And VS Code has a very nice GUI that helps you like just do it with your mouse. You don't have to type any commands. So you can visit this link and just go to the git homepage. There is a download button in this side, and yeah, I think you can just get the first one, which is git for Windows x64, right? And for macOS, I think you have certain commands you can run. I think this is the command you can run in your terminal for installing it in macOS. So I'll just send you this link as well. So I'll go ahead and download the Windows version of Git. All right. So the setup is also similar, as in you just download the exe file and all the stuff. Wait for it to download, and once you launch it, there will be an installer that guides you through it. So here it is. So there are some the options that it asks for the Git setup, but then you can just leave it as it is for for the most part. There's not much changes to be here done here. Now in the Git installer, there's a very important option you need to check. That is to use that what text editor you need to use for for Git commands. Like there are some certain Git commands that launch a code editor. So for that, we just installed VS Code, correct? So just in the drop down, choose Visual Studio Code as Git's default editor. So just take note of this, right? And click next. And for the second point, for the second dialog here, there is a concept called branch in GitHub and Git basically, but we'll cover it later, as in it's not really important right now for you to get started. So in this page, just select the second option and ensure the word main is typed in the second option. So the branch should be called main. So just keep these 2 points in mind. The first point is to use Visual Studio Code as the Git's default editor. The second point you need to check is to use the default branch name as main, which is the second option here. So there are a lot of options that there are a lot of other configurations which you can change for Git installation, but then as of now, you can just select the default options for all of them. And when you finally click install, it just starts doing the setup. Oh, while in the time that Git is installing, let's go to VS Code window, and then let's start with the extensions page. All right. So what you can do is go to the view menu and just select the extensions option, right? So you will see this kind of like 4 squares kind of an option on the left side, and this is where you get all the extensions for as we mentioned earlier. So just to repeat, extensions are what add functionality to VS Code, because VS Code in and of itself is just a text editor. It doesn't do much, but then all these extensions will add support for the specific language that you're using. So let's say for JavaScript, there is some extension. For Python, there are some extensions. And let's say for C programming, Java development, all these things have their own extensions. So for this thing, we'll get to the extensions later. But then one of the important, like there are some more extensions that's for our portfolio website. But then what you can do is just for now, just type Git as an extension, and there is this thing called git blame. But then okay, actually, you know what, if you just look here, there's a menu called source control, right? So this is the Git extension that I was talking about. Sorry about that. So VS Code comes with the Git GUI for it, so you don't have to mess around with the command prompt. And as you can look here, the Git installation is completed. All right. So just to summarize, we have installed VS Code first, and we have installed Git. You can close these tabs. Okay. Now, the next thing we need to do is download Node.js. So this is the third software that you need to download. You can just open this link that I've sent in the chat. This is the third software, and this is the package manager, or this is the runtime environment for JavaScript to run on your laptop. So we would be using Node.js for running other types of software. So there's not much to learn about Node itself, but then yeah, it's really useful software that's required for a lot of other things. So before you download, just in the options, make sure you select the following here. Let the version number be as it is. Choose your operating system here. So I'm choosing Windows. Now for the second one, instead of Docker, you can, well, that's good. Okay, give me a second. Okay, sorry. You just have to look at the second section here. So for the Node.js download website, just look pre-built Node.js command. I mean section for choose your operating system, and I'm assuming for all the laptops these days it's x64. So just leave it at the default and click this option that says Windows installer. Okay. So when you do this, it will download an installer again. So you have to set it up. For macOS users, I think the procedure is very standard. All you have to do is just select the macOS option in the second section. Ignore the first section, guys, and then just click on macOS installer. And I think if you're running old Intel based laptops for your MacBooks, you have to choose the x64 option. And if you're running the Apple Silicon laptops, which is the M1, M2, all these kind of MacBooks, then you have to choose the ARM64 option. So just for macOS, keep these two options in mind and choose the one that works. All right. Or if one doesn't work, just try the other. It's as simple as that. Okay, so we have, let's set up Node also. Click on the installer and you will have a wizard like this. Just keep proceeding to it through it, and for the most part, the default options are really adequate. And yeah, just click the install button and wait for it to install. Okay, so that's basically it for the Node.js setup. Okay, so what we can do next is just close your VS Code window. This is important, right? Since you have installed other software like Git and Node, we need to just restart VS Code. So let me just go ahead with that and open it again. Okay, so here we have Visual Studio Code. We just reopened it and there's nothing much to be done, right? Now, you also have to verify certain things. Let's just open a command prompt, all right? And in the command prompt, you can type just type git and hit enter, and you should see all these kind of help messages come through, right? So that shows that you have git installed. And if you type npm command, it will also show some help text. So just ensure that when you type git, hit enter, and when you type node and hit enter, that all these texts come. Even for macOS, it's the same logic. So if you have any command prompt or if you have any terminal windows, close them first, open it again, and then just try these commands again. So just type git enter and just type npm enter. If these two works, if these two commands work, then it means you are good to go. All right. Okay, so there's a doubt, and it says what is the difference between the terminal on VS Code, and what is the difference? I mean, between that and just the command prompt. So in essence, they are exactly the same. There's nothing really. It's basically the same command prompt running here, as well as if I go to VS Code, you have a menu called as terminal, and in the terminal menu, you have an option called new terminal. So when you click that, you get a command prompt window that's running down here. Now, what you can do is, okay, ignore this error message. But yeah, you will usually see a prompt like this usually. What you can do is in the drop down here, you can choose command prompt if that's really what you want. But VS Code defaults to PowerShell. So that's also a really good terminal that comes with Windows. And for macOS, yeah, it's the same story. The terminal here and the terminal that you see here are exactly the same. The only benefit you get with the one in VS Code is that it is within the VS Code window, and you can drag and drop stuff into the terminal, and you can click on links inside VS Code that will open files directly. So it's just more of a convenience thing. So you can absolutely just ditch this terminal and use a, like use a terminal app separately. That's completely up to you. Okay, so let's also cover the basics of terminals since we have some doubts in the chat. And it's basically there are not GUI tools are not always available for the user in the sense that, for example, if I want to install Node packages, which is something we'll be doing later, we don't have a GUI ready for it yet, or like we don't have a popular enough GUI for it. So it's usually easier to type a small command and just hit enter rather than uh, like downloading a specific GUI tool for that. But then for a lot of the things, we are not using the terminal. If you've noticed, for example, we have we are not using the git command on the terminal, but rather there is a git uh, like panel in Visual Studio Code. We are well, that solves a big amount of it, and we'll just go through it. Yeah, but then having terminal knowledge is really helpful. So there are some terminal basics that let's we'll go through it. So whenever you open a terminal, there is a path that's displayed. So yeah, this is how your command prompt in Windows will look like, and something similar in macOS. So this basically shows the current folder that you're located in. So the example of this is like, let's say when you open a folder on your on a computer, you see the path that is displayed on the top, right? So what I can do is I can open, let's say something like documents, and then I can probably go to something like there are some bunch of folders here, right? So Visual Studio, something, something. So this path that you have here, the fact that you open a folder is basically how the terminal behaves. So there are two important commands in the terminal that's applicable for both Mac OS and Windows. So the first command is called cd. So what cd does is it stands for change directory, and there is another command called dir, or dir is for Windows and ls is for Mac OS and Linux. Okay, since I'm on Windows, I'll be using well, dir. Or actually, you know what? Let me just show it to you with VS Code itself, right? And we'll be using this thing called PowerShell. So PowerShell is a more recent prompt that's available in Windows. And when I call the cd command, it tells me that it doesn't do anything, but this is my current folder. When I type the ls command, you can see that it shows all the folders that are located in this folder right now. Yeah. So let's say I want to go to my documents folder. So what I have to do is type cd space and then type documents. So this basically moves the terminal into the folder, if that makes sense. So now when you type the ls command again, you can see the contents of the documents folder, right? Now, yeah, so just to summarize, cd command, you type cd space and then the name of the folder that you want to go to. And then when you type ls command, it will show you the contents of the folder. There is a third command, or even with cd. Now let's say you want to go outside one folder, right? So what you have to do is type cd space double dot. So double dot is a special name that is not a real folder, but then what it means is that it will tell your command prompt to go outside one folder. So as you can see, I was in documents. When I type cd space double dot, I have gone out of it. So let's say I can, instead go to pictures or something. Oh, sorry. Or okay, I don't have that. I can run the ls command to see what folders I have here. And there's a folder called Microsoft. So let's just say cd space Microsoft. And when I hit enter on this command, you can see that it has entered the Microsoft folder. And when I hit ls, it shows the folders that are located in this folder and also the files. So now the third command is mkdir. So let me just go back to documents again. And what mkdir does is it basically creates a folder. So it stands for make directory. And guys, yeah, folder and directory are pretty much the same thing for all intents and purposes. You don't have to break your head on the difference. Okay. So what I'm going to do is that I need to download the well, I need to download the portfolio code, correct? So for that, let's go to the folder here. Sorry, let's go to the root of the repository, and then this is the repos GitHub page. And then if you just click on this green button, there's a command. This link that you can copy. So just copy this link. Okay, we'll keep this in mind. And now what we are basically going to do is we are going to start downloading the repository to our laptop. So mkdir basically says when I run the mkdir command, and if I type ls again, you can see that a folder called portfolio has been created. Okay. So what I'll do now is I'll go cd portfolio, and then if I put ls here, you can see that the command gave no output, right? So these are the three commands, and I hope everyone's clear with these commands so far. If anyone has a doubt, just raise your hands and like ask one of the council members, and we'll get you. So far we have covered installing Visual Studio Code. We have downloaded the Git program. We downloaded Node runtime environment, Node.js, and we have also just gone through some basics of command prompt or terminal and the commands that you use it. So yeah, you guys can show thumbs up if you have any doubts. I mean, sorry, if it's clear, or if you have any doubts, you can just message one of us. All right. So now that we have all the Visual Studio and all these things set up, so what I'm going to do is uh, I'm going to start downloading the repository to my laptop. Correct. I just made this folder called portfolio. If you want, I can just show it to you on like file browser. This is the folder, right? It's empty right now. So I'll keep this to the side so that you can see it better. Okay, let me just check this. Okay. So what I'm going to do is there's a command. It's called git space clone space, and then you have to type you have to paste the link that you copied earlier. So let me just repeat. This is a git command which you can run. That it says git space, and there's a command called clone that tells the git program to download the contents of this repository. And where did I get this link? Just it's simple. You can go to the web page and click the screen button and just copy this URL. There's a button here. Okay, and just paste it here. So this is the first thing you usually do to download the repository, and just hit the enter button. Now this will take some time, but then as you can see that this is a kind of a small repository, right? So it was quite fast. So you can see that a folder has appeared here, and when I open it, you can see that all these files are located, right? This is basically the code files that's located, in the repository. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to do cd, and then the name of the folder is September. And yeah, you guys can press a tab button for autocomplete. It's really helpful. So all I did was, cd space web, and then when I hit the tab button, it brought the full name for me. So this works on all kinds of terminals. Okay, so I'll just let's recreate this thing. So I'll just delete this portfolio folder. All right. So what we are going to do now is guys, just a moment. I'll be back. Yeah, sorry about that. So okay, I'll just quickly explain how I made the portfolio folder. Yeah, with the command prompt, right? See, you can technically just do this in a file browser, right click, new folder and folder, but we'll do it with the command prompt so that you get an experience for it. So the command we have to use here is the cd command. You'll usually start in some random folder like this, which is not your desktop or whatever. So we need to use the cd command to go to the specific folder that we want to be in. So I want to be inside my documents folder. So I have to, it's like I'm here right now. And for me to enter documents, I have to just type cd space documents. Okay. When you hit the enter command, it's basically equivalent to just as if you double clicked on the documents folder. So that's what's happening if you want to think about it in that sense. So this is how you open a folder, if you want to call it like that. And if you want to get out of a folder, cd space and double dot. That will get you back to the original folder. So I'll enter documents again. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder called portfolio. Okay. So the command for it is called mkdir. So the syntax of the command is also really simple. All the commands we've seen so far just take one argument or like one value after the name of the command, or like just one or two values. So mkdir is a command that will ask you the name of the folder. So you have to just type portfolio. This is the name I'm giving. You can choose any name you want. All right. So you can see that a portfolio folder just got created over here, and you can open it in your file browser. You can see that there's actually nothing in here. And in VS Code, what I have to do is just type cd space portfolio, and you can enter it. And guys, you don't need to necessarily do this in VS Code. Let's say I have a command prompt here. I can just type dir. The dir command is something that works if you're on, you're not on, if you're on Windows, you have to use the dir command. I'm going to type sorry, I have to type documents first. So cd space documents. And then if I, sorry, if I see the listing of the files here, you can see there's something called portfolio. So as I made here, so cd space portfolio, and you can see that now I'm inside the portfolio folder again. So you can do this in the terminal or within VS Code, right? So both are the equivalent, or like both are basically the same. So now that you have created the folders with command prompt, just keep note of this. I have sent the command in the chat, okay? So mkdir space the name of the folder. That's the command, if you want a reference. All right. Now with this, we need to download the, okay, I'll now move on to downloading the code from the repository, as in the link that we have. So this is the command you need to remember, okay? So git space clone space, and then just type the, what do I say? Copy this link that's available in every repository. You can just click this green button. And this basically tells the Git program the URL from which you're going to actually download the repository, right? So I'll paste this in the chat as well. Yeah. So yeah, just to reiterate the point in chat, all the commands that I've shown so far, if you're using PowerShell, you will see PowerShell is like a newer version of command prompt in Windows. Okay. So if you see PS here, that's basically PowerShell, and in that you can use the same commands that you use in macOS. So ls for showing the to list out the files, cd for changing the folder, and mkdir for creating a folder. So I'll just type it once again. Right. So you guys can just have this as a reference. Okay. Now we are going to use the git clone command to download the contents of the repository. So I'll just run it again. And this takes a moment or two. And you can see here that it has downloaded into a folder called webtember_mtc. And if I just open it in my file browser, you can see that all the files have appeared here, including a hidden folder called .git. So this is the folder that the Git program uses to keep track of your repository. So you don't need to care about this much. It just contains some internal stuff. But then just have in mind that this is a really important folder and you should not delete it, right? And if you delete it, well, things will get messed up. So just keep an eye out for this. So even in the command prompt, I can just type cd, can type ls to see the names of the folders here. And I can see that the webtember_mtc folder got created. So I'll type cd space webtember_mtc. And yeah, we are in the folder right now. Okay. So there is not, okay, now that you have cloned the repo, how do you actually open the files in VS Code? So what I'm going to do is just, if you open the Explorer, right, just go to File Explorer. And I mean, actually, is everyone clear with what we have covered so far? To setting up VS Code, downloading, I mean, creating folders and all that stuff. If any doubts, please raise your hand and we'll address it. Okay. So yeah, now let's deal with opening this folder within VS Code. So we can use all of VS Code's features. So what I'm going to do is I just click the open folder button in my the side panel, open the Explorer panel here, and just click on open folder. All right. So I have to manually go to the folder. So it was in, hold up, documents. I have portfolio, September MTC. And once you have opened it here, just click select folder. So the window will refresh, and what happens is that you can see that all of your files have appeared, are now appearing on the side. So now I hope everyone has the VS Code window open with the Git repo, or if you want to be fancy in the command prompt here, let's say this is the folder that you have, right? So what I'm going to do is type code space dot. Okay, when you run this command code space dot, the dot basically refers to the current folder. Remember I said dot dot, the double dot refers to the folder above it, right? So if I type, cd double dot, it will go outside one folder. But if I type cd space a single dot, it will stay in the same folder, because a dot is a shortcut that means to refer to the current folder itself, right? So when I put code space dot, it is like you're telling VS Code command, and you're telling it to open this folder as a workspace, okay? And workspace is nothing but just having all these files on the side. And then when you open some code file, let's say I'll just choose a random one, you can see that you're going to get all this kind of autocomplete and the like the JavaScript stuff. All this would be useful for you to develop like later on. Okay. So I hope everyone's set up the. I mean, clone. This action is called cloning the repo. Okay, cloning the repo is when you basically download the repo's files and create, like, just have it in your laptop. Okay. So just raise your hands if, I mean, sorry, give a thumbs up if everyone's set up so far. And if any doubts, please ask. I'm asking this a bit frequently because every step of this is really important for you to set up the entire environment. Okay. Okay. Can I explain how to clone again? So it's really simple. Just in the command prompt. Okay. I hope you're clear with the cd command, correct? The cd command, basically you use it to type the name of the folder and you can enter it. Okay. What you have to do is just type this git clone command, which I've mentioned earlier in chat. Okay. So git space clone space, and then you type the URL that you copied from the website. That is this one, right? Yeah, you can see it here. So git clone, and then the URL that you copied from the GitHub website. When you run this command, the Git program will basically download the repository's code contents and it will keep it in your laptop. So cloning process is really simple, guys. All you have to do is just run git space clone space and then get this URL from the repo. Make sure it's the correct folder. That's really important. Apart from that, when you run it, it's just really simple and you have all the, well, I'm not going to run it again because I've already done the cloning process, but I hope this clarifies the cloning process. All you have to do is just run one command. Do we have any more doubts? Okay, let's proceed with the, well, remainder of the setup, right? And yeah, guys, if you have any doubts, please don't hesitate. Okay. Now, what we have done is, as yeah, so far we have downloaded the code base or the code files from GitHub and using the git command, and Yeah, we have the files available here. What we have done is we have opened the folder in VS Code. So let me just show that again. This is the empty VS Code window that you start with, right? So once you can open the command prompt or terminal, and then you have to cd into documents and all that stuff. You run the git clone command, and that will download your code. So now once you have downloaded the code, just close your terminal window, or I mean keep it as it is, doesn't matter. Click on the open folder button that's there in this explorer menu. Okay, or what you can do is go to view and just click on explorer if you don't see it for some reason. Click on open folder, and that's where you can browse for the same folder that you have. Just one second. Okay. So yeah, what you can so once you have just cloned the repository, you can go here, click open folder, and then just enter, like, manually browse for the exact path where you have you know uh, downloaded the code. So I went to portfolio, Webtember MTC, and then I'll click select folder. So once you do that, your VS Code window will, like, kind of refresh, and that's when you know that it's successfully opening, right? So I hope everyone's clear with how to open the folder. It's just nothing. In the Explorer view, click the open folder button and just select the folder, all right, manually. So now that you have this here, let's start configuring the extensions, all right? So, okay, just give thumbs up, guys, if you're clear with it so far. Okay. So extensions, as we explained earlier, is really helpful for you to add extra support and add extra features to VS Code. Because without extensions, VS Code is just a text editor. It doesn't do much for you. You might as well just use Notepad at this point. So there's a panel called extensions panel. It's these four squares, and there are a lot of extensions that's available for you to search. You can just there's a section called popular. You can just scroll through it, or you can search for something if you like read an article or something. So you can browse for it. What we have done is, for this repository, you can see there's a section called recommended. Okay, so in the recommended section, you can see that we have added, like, some 8 extensions that are really helpful for web development. Okay, so I'll just go through all the extensions. All you can, or what you can do is just okay, yeah, you can just manually install all the extensions, and whenever if it asks this, just click trust publisher. Or the right way to do is just look at the statistics of the extension. Okay, you can see here that this has 15 million downloads and it has a 4.5 star rating. So that's how this is a, it's a kind of a trusted extension. So if you ever have a doubt that uh, you don't really trust the extension, then just don't get it. It's or like look for alternatives, and you can read online articles. So always be careful of what extensions you download, because extensions are, after all, someone else's code, right? And if you download some random person's code, it might screw your system. So just keep that in mind. In the recommended section, we have added the extensions that you need to install for developing your portfolio. So just open this panel, go to the recommended section, and just click install on all of them. So while these install, I will just explain what each one of them does. Okay. So the first one is called this React snippets, and what it does is it gives you autocomplete for building React applications. So we will be covering React in the further sessions, but then if you have this, it's really helpful for like as a beginner, or as a or even if you're an advanced developer, having autocomplete really saves you time, and that's one of the key features of having an IDE. ESLint is another extension that basically does the error checking and warnings for your code. So in that sense, like, let's say you are missing a semicolon, or you have, like, created a variable but never used it. These kind of warnings will be given to you by the ESLint extension, and Yeah, this is really useful to have. Now, these are basically um, the two extensions that you like necessarily need, because all the other extensions are optional. But I'll still explain some of them just so you know what we are giving you, right? So there is another. Remember CSS, right? The styling language which you used to know, give colors and background images and sizes and all this stuff. So Tailwind is a special like edition of CSS. It's not made by, it's made by someone else, which basically offers you really convenient styling code styles. So again, we'll explore Tailwind CSS in the coming sessions, but then it makes your styling job much easier by putting all the styles in the HTML itself. It's really convenient. So Tailwind CSS IntelliSense. This IntelliSense is basically what Microsoft calls as autocomplete. It's like a trade name or like a copyrighted word or something. So getting intelligence for all your lab programming languages is one of the first things you need to do before you start coding it. Okay. So this is Tailwind intelligence, and it gives you autocomplete for the Tailwind like class names. Okay. Then there is this extension. It's called To Do Highlight. It basically wherever you type the word to do in your code, let's say I just type TODO and put a colon, it will put it in a yellow color. So let's say you're writing a big piece of code, but then you want to leave some sections to do later. So I suggest you can write something like this, and then it will highlight it for you. All the other stuff, they don't have much explanation, but you can optionally choose to install them. So yeah, that's basically it for the extensions. And let's go through the article. See what's. So you can read this documentation for creating your React program from scratch, but then we'll be covering this in tomorrow's workshop either ways. Sorry, the next workshop either ways. So what we will do today is to just get the website running on your laptop. Okay. So what's just to summarize again, these are all the code files that you have, which you can browse in the file browser. And we have an index.html here, which loads some script file, and this loads some app, and that loads some other things, and you have a lot of code that's really split into multiple files. This might seem it might seem very convoluted, but then it's much better than doing everything in a single file. So now how do you run this program? That's where npm comes into play. Remember we installed node.js earlier. So this package uses a bunch of this portfolio website, we are using React.js for our front end. So that React.js is supplied to you with the help of npm node package manager. Okay. So npm space I, this is the command which you can type that will install all the packages that we have added to the repository. Okay, I think if you get this kind of an error, just open the drop down and choose command prompt. Okay, this is a Windows only thing. For Mac OS, you usually won't have these kind of security restrictions. And if you want to fix this, just Google it. There is some really simple instructions for that. But then we'll not. That's not the point of this workshop. So, all the easier way to do is just click the drop down here next to the plus icon and choose command prompt. Okay. And another feature of VS Code is that you can open multiple like terminal windows, and all of them will come in the side like this. So this way, let's say you are running like multiple commands, you can keep track of them easily like this. So now in this command prompt window, I'm already VS Code has already put me into the folder, so that's really convenient. All I'm going to do is npm space I. Or actually, hold on. Yeah, so this is my command prompt. I'm going to run npm space I. So when I run this command, it will take some time. So all it's doing is you can see that it has created a new folder called node modules, and it has added 242 packages, which seems like a lot, but then the idea is that we have a React framework, so a React library, correct? This React library uses a bunch of other packages, and those packages use a bunch of other packages. So this is what you call a dependency. This is a new terminology. You can just keep note of it. Dependency is any library that is used by your code. Okay. So in our project, we can say the dependency is React.js. So now we have this another command called npm run dev. So this is also mentioned in the article. Okay, so I'll so npm run dev is a command that basically compiles your code and then starts a web server. So you can see that this is a really fast tool, as you can see, just like within a second, and then you can click on this link to open the URL in your web browser. So for example, let me just pull up a web browser here. Yeah, I will copy this link and then I'll open it in a new tab and I'll just paste the link. Okay. So if you just give it a moment, this is the hello that we typed earlier, if you remember. But then, as you can see, your portfolio website has started to load, and you can, just go through it and make your changes and all that stuff. So to show you how to make changes, the very good feature about this Wheat program is that it does changes live. So let's say I go to, let's say I want to change this text to my own name. So first of all, I don't know which file the code is located in, right? I have all these like 20, 30 files. This is where we'll be using the search feature of VS Code. Okay. So let's say I want to change this name. I'm going to copy it. And then there's the search feature in the search panel in VS Code. So let's say I type Donald Trump here, and you can see here that it lists out all the files where the word Donald Trump is coming. Okay. So let's say I'm not sure, but okay, let's just go through all the files. So hero.jsx is this file where you can see that, or actually, let's search for this text and we will paste it here. Okay. So you can see that it appears here. And this is basically where Donald Trump's name appears, right? So Donald is here, and then the word Trump is in a blue color. That's why that's the you need to keep this in mind, right? So whenever you search for something, there's a chance that those two words don't come immediately next to each other. So in that case, just just use some creative logic to get around, or like for example, I tried searching the words around it. So in that sense, I got this line of code. So let me just change it to my own name. And when I just press Ctrl S, you can see the website immediately changed. I did not even reach for the reload button, right? And if I just undo the changes and press Ctrl S again, you can see that the the text here reverted back to it. So this is the benefit of using this program called Veed, as you can see in the terminal. And yeah, it's a really cool tool. So this is the build tool that we were talking about earlier, the bundler tool, right? Otherwise, it would be really impossible to do the development process. So this is how you get the code running on your laptop. So I'll just repeat it again. You just close all the terminals. Okay. So go to terminal menu, open new terminal. Okay. And if you want, change it to command prompt. All right. And in the command prompt, just run npm I. You don't have to run npm I every time. npm I is only run for the very first time when you want to download all the packages. But then once it's like running pip install, right? Once you run pip install, you don't keep doing it every single time. So this is just to run only one time. The every time you want to launch this website on your laptop, just type npm run dev. Okay. So when you type this and hit enter, it will take a moment, and then you can just click on this link to open it in the browser. So give it a second. Yeah, there you go. It has completely loaded in your browser. And yeah, every time you make a change, let's say you just type a line of code here, it will automatically reload. It says update here, as you can see. And then the word has also appeared here. So I hope that clarifies a lot of things, and gets you started on the track of web development and just development in general. And we have covered what tools we use to do these kind of projects. So I hope this was a good introductory section to all of you, and this basically concludes today's session. So if you guys have any doubts, please message us, and we'll spend the rest of the workshop answering it. Okay. And in the meanwhile, I'll also just go through some useful tips you can keep in mind to. Yeah, we'll also go through some useful tips for writing good quality code, and also just some useful, really informative stuff. So hold on. Yeah, 1 second. Just give me a second, guys. All right, guys. So again, these useful tips, uh, I mean, it's not much. I get it, but then it's really, if you do this right from the start, you will save headache like later on. So just always ensure you're in the correct folder before you run a command, right? So you wouldn't want to be, cloning your repository to some random folder in your laptop, and then later you wouldn't be able to find it. So that's a really bad thing you want to avoid. So just use the cd command and use the ls command to, like, see if you're in the correct folder. So that's what the first point is about. And the second point is about making useful commits. So I had explained the concept of committing earlier. And yeah, once you have created, once you have cloned a repository, all you can do is, let's say I want to make a change to this website. Okay. So we'll have the website displayed here, right? So I have made this kind of a change, right? So what I'm going to do is open the source control panel, which is basically what Git does. And then there are three concepts, okay? There are three words: fetch, pull, and push, okay? So fetch basically downloads the changes. I mean, it just fetch basically gets the changes that other people have made. Pull button will, apply those changes to your working code base, and push will upload the commits that you have made. So why is fetch and pull two different things? That's a really good question, right? So we'll just quickly explain it. Let's say you're working on this hero.jsx, and then let's say your friend is also working on the same file. So now when your friend makes a commit to the repository, and you run a command, you don't want his changes, or, like, you don't want their changes to completely overwrite the stuff that you have written, correct? You want to be able to, like, progressively, like, do it only when you're aware of it, or something. Like, you don't want it to suddenly overwrite all your code changes. So fetch is just a button that, tells you if there is a change that is yet to be pulled, like, but it doesn't actually copy the changes to your code base. It just keeps it ready. The pull button will actually apply those changes to your code files. And let's make a commit right now. What we have to do is, you can only make a commit to a repository that you have the ownership of, and all this ownership stuff is decided in GitHub. So you can go to the GitHub repository settings, and then, give the access, like collaboration access, to your friends. Once you've done that, they can use the git command to, clone the repository like we did before. And then in VS Code, we have this convenient panel. What it does is, it's called source control or version control, same thing. I'm going to, make changes to all my files. You know what? Actually, let's just change the name, like, to, sorry. Yeah, yeah. Let's just change it to Microsoft Tech Club, because it's the best. And then what we're going to do is, we're going to commit this change to the repository. So if you go to the source control panel, you can see that this conveniently shows that one file has changed, right? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to select this file. It's called with the plus button, and stage changes are basically the changes that are going to be pushed in the commit. And if you don't have any stage changes, you cannot make a commit. Okay, so always remember to first stage your changes, and in this way you can, like, progressively add files that you need. And I'm going to say, change name of person, or like change title name, or I can just type change name. You can you have to type a commit message that's, very brief and to the point, but then it explains the change that you have done. So in this way, it's basically for your own benefit. If you, let's say, look at a commit history and all it says is some random stuff, it wouldn't be really helpful for you, correct? Because you wouldn't know what was the change that you made. So in this case, I'm going to type a useful name called change name. And when I click the commit button, you can see that it has created the commit. But then, as I explained earlier, there are two versions of the code, right? Um, one version of the code is in GitHub, and the latest version of the code is in my laptop. And the fact is that I haven't sent the latest code on my laptop to the GitHub server yet. So that is where the third button comes in. It's called push. So any commits that you make locally will be sent to the GitHub server when you click the push button. And yeah, that's about it. Now you can see when you open GitHub, let me just show you. Yeah, when you just reload this page, you can see that if you just go to the commit history in here, you can see that my commit has appeared that says change name, and then it shows the exact changes I've made as well. So this way you have successfully kept a record, like a version of the you know, of the repository. Now let's go to actually fixing the code, right? This is really quick. This not it's not a time consuming process. Let's say I want to revert the two changes that I made. So here you can see I added hello to the body, and here you can see that I changed the name from Donald Trump to, you know, Microsoft Tetler. But then I want to, you know, I kind of want to not have these changes anymore, and I want to get back to the version that was, you know, two commits ago. So what I will do is, again, right click on a commit, and then there should be, well, not sure about this, but I mean, yeah, what you can do is just open the file and it shows you the changes, right? So you can manually, the one way is to just manually go to the file and, you know, just delete the line of code. And the second file is hero.jsx. How do I know it is hero.jsx? Because in this commit called change name, it tells me that this file has changed. The M stands for modified. Okay, you can see here also, and it basically shows the exact change that I've made, right? And you can copy it, I guess. And if I open hero.jsx, I can also just like paste it back. You can see that I've just pasted the original line of code here. And let's go to the live preview, and you can see that the text has come back to what it was, right? And now that I've reverted those changes, let me just go to the commit panel. I mean the GitHub, the Git panel, and then you can see that I've made changes to both the files. So I'm going to add both of them one by one.